I'm Lexi Davis, a love embodiment coach who helps people create a love that feels like home, and I'm here to bring more romance and playfulness into the world. I'm also an international retreat host, vibe curator, and human connector. I serve people through my business, Alive to Enjoy, and this podcast where I invite guests from around the world to sprinkle their wisdom and expand your perspective so you can create the deepest love you possibly can reach in this lifetime. I also want you to live the most joyous life, whatever that looks like to you, and I hope that this slice of the internet brings you lots of smiles and helps you keep your heart open. Thank you for choosing Heart Snuggles to be in your ears each week, and I'm so glad you're here with me. Welcome, Heart Snugglers. We hope you have a wonderful day today. I have a gorgeous guest, Meg, for the podcast today. We're just going to have a beautiful flow. She is full of passion and wisdom, and I'm so excited to hear from you today. So go ahead and tell them a little bit about you.
Thanks for having me. A little bit about myself. I never know where to begin with this kind of question. It's how far back do I go? What do I include?
Whatever you feel today.
Yeah, I'll just kind of bring what's alive, and then I'm sure we'll deepen into some places. But so my name's Meg, and I am a sex and relationship coach, and I live in Australia with my husband, Jacob. And Jacob and I we co-host a podcast called Sex, Love, and Everything in Between, where we just have very real, raw conversations about sex, love, and everything in between. I work with women predominantly, and what I'm super fucking passionate about is women, reclaiming the fullness of themselves. I call it being a full spectrum woman. This is truly the essence or the core of my work. It's really supporting women and holding space for women to reclaim all the parts and pieces of themselves that the world, for a very, very, very fucking long time, not just for us, but many of the generations that came before us, that the world told us were wrong. The parts of ourselves we were told to be ashamed of or to just completely disconnect and disassociate from. So, and I truly believe, I'm a sex and relationship coach, but that's the core piece. When a woman wants gloriously deep orgasms and expansive sex, it is about reclaiming her fullness. If she desires a relationship where she is deeply met, she must go on the journey of reclaiming the parts of herself that she wants to be met in, and she wants to feel safe to be an expression of in her relationship. So yeah, that's the core of what I do in the world, and what's happening in my life right now.
So excited to go into it, and it's such amazing work. I love all the stuff you post, always resonates. So But first, we're going to get into the two first podcast questions. And the first one is, what was the last random act of kindness someone did for you?
Oh, I love that so much. Did for me. One that I did, there was this cute little moment. I want to share it because I was at the markets yesterday, and there's so many at these local markets of ours, so many cute little kids who just go there to watch the tiny children in all their gloriousness. But I just bought a basket full of fruit and veggies, and this little maybe 18-month-old came over and was just looking at my basket. I was like, is there something here that you want? And she pointed to the apples. I was like, here you go. And then she just skipped off. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is the sweetest little moment ever. I want to give all the children everything from my basket. But in terms of a random act of kindness someone has done for me, let me just take a moment.
I know it's a tricky one. It's not something we think about often.
Yeah. I'm feeling and it's maybe not a random act of kindness, but I feel I'm just thinking of a few people in my life that just when they know to send a message at the exact time, and just those people, I'm so appreciative of some of the women in my life that just know exactly when to send that text or know exactly what to say. And that forever, it can feel random in the moment of just oh, how did they know that? How did they know what I was maybe moving through? But yeah, really deeply appreciate women like that in my life.
Oh my God, that's the best feeling ever. I'm yeah, thank you every time. Yeah, I feel that.
I love that question.
And I love the first memory. I'm not memory. The moment you shared the little kitties. They're so
It
cute.
was so cute. I was saying that because my husband was there, and then the mum of the little girl was there too. We were like, oh, like the unapologeticness of a child, just being like, I don't know who you are, but there's an apple in that basket that I want. And just to be like, yes, like claim that. Yes, you asked for it. Here it is. Like more of that.
Yeah, we learn so much from children. It's wild.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is, what is a shameful memory you have around sex or relationships?
What is a shameful memory, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I feel like even if I think back to being a teenager, my whole just experience, and like anytime anyone said the word sex, I used to go so red in the face when I was embarrassed. And I just feel like the whole way that I felt about sex was just laced in shame. And it was so interesting though, because I'm one of three girls and I'm the middle child. And neither of my sisters were like that. They were so expressive and they were so wanting to talk about sex, and they would so like, but I think it's like I think it's many things, but I was like such a high achiever growing up. And I think sex felt like something that I just had no idea about. And I didn't like not knowing about things. So it was almost like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm a beginner, and I haven't kissed a boy, and I haven't done this, and oh my God, I don't want anyone to find out. And there was a shame around that piece around sexual exploration for me. Yeah, so I feel like just that whole laced in shame. And then when I look at actually when I became sexually active, I was then drinking a lot too, and I can feel it in my body, that like that feeling of shame waking up of a morning if I'd had a one night stand, or like if I'd can't remember what I'd done or what I'd said or what kind of, just like it's so like visceral in my body right now. So yeah, there was a lot of shame.
I feel you. Yeah, everything you said. I was one of the last people to have sex in my friend group. And so I was like, I just want to get it over with. And like, yeah, all those emotions. So I feel that. And yes, I'm happy I don't drink anymore, because those were crazy, crazy times.
Totally. And that's just like an accepted part of drinking culture. Like wake up and feel just like that pit of like, I can feel it. It's like a pit of just like, woof, in the stomach. And yeah.
It's very weird that it's normalized to me. And that leads me into, how did you end up in this glorious relationship that you have now?
Oh, well, I love our like origin story, because it's very fun. I was 21 at the time, and I had come out of like, I was such a high achiever at school. Then I went on to study marketing and psychology, and I was in my final year of that. And I was very just like, there's the one way to do life, and you achieve and you get a job. And I was just like, I was like the perfect little student brainwashed into this is the way, and everyone else is like, if you don't try harder, you're not on this kind of path, you're done for. And in my final year of uni, I found this blog about health and wellness, and it was also about self-love. And I remember just finding it randomly, and I spent just like 3 or 4 hours reading this blog and being like, what the fuck is this? Like, I didn't know this was an option. I didn't know I didn't have to drink, or like, I didn't know that I could like have this beautiful relationship with myself or feed myself really beautiful food. And that was such a catalyst for me. And after reading that blog, I started the journey of like, I was plant-based at the time, and I was just eating organic food and started yoga and all of these different things. But then I started going into this health food store, this organic like health grocer. And that's where my now husband worked. And so I very quickly got a crush on him. It took us 9, maybe even 10 months to get together. And the store was called Ray Organics, and I used to call him my Ray Organics boyfriend to like everyone else, and just go in there and be like, ask me out, kiss me already. And then there was, it took 9 months for it all to unfold, and it's quite a hilarious story. Yeah, but our relationship at the beginning was definitely not what it is now. This was like 9 years ago. And so it's definitely been a journey to come to the place of relating we're at now. And we've always had a deep relationship, but it's been such a journey to find ourselves in like the way we communicate now and the way we navigate just like life together and yeah.
So beautiful and so cute. I love that
I
story.
know it is. I love our story. It's very fun.
That makes me think though, I always have this theory of like, how can, so like you guys clearly, it took it a little bit, but it happened. But what about the stories when someone's like knows it's their person, it's a full yes for them, the other person's a no? How does that happen? Like energetically, I'm like, yeah, I'm always curious about that.
Yeah. And I guess, I don't know. It's so like for me, I knew there was a part of me that knew that there was something about Jacob. And I'd quit drinking at that time, and I'd actually come out of a pretty toxic 2.5 year on and off relationship. And so I was actually like celibate for a year, not really meaning to be, but it was like I was so just invested in the self-development world and like really just like on my own journey, and very clear that I wasn't drinking anymore. And that's where I used to sleep with a lot of men and like have my connections. And so, yeah, there was just like there was this clarity on like, oh, this man feels, yeah, there's something about this man. And I was listening. I do know Abraham Hicks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was listening to so much Abraham Hicks at the time. So it was very much like this is the feeling, but I'm also not like attached to the form. And even though I was calling him my Ray Organics boyfriend, there was also this like lightness to it, and this like, you know, like I'm just going to follow the curiosity and see what happens. But yeah, Jacob was definitely not realizing that I was really into him. It took like him getting drunk and me making a move on him for it to unfold. But I feel, yeah, it's, I think that Jacob and I always talk about this in relationship, like the feeling versus the form. And I think sometimes it's like, sometimes we can feel what we desire to feel in a particular person. But then that, you know, if they're not reciprocating that can just be evidence that that feeling is possible, or that particular man or woman is out there, and letting that be just like evidence that the love we desire or the intimacy we desire is possible.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, because we make it, sometimes I hear people, or I've done in the past too, I make it mean it's wrong, that like, oh, my intuition's wrong that I felt that way because it didn't work out, or something like that, when it's really like, no, this is evidence. I like that turnaround of that thought.
And I think it's also evidence of like your willingness to love, or your willingness to open. And I think that's something to really appreciate as women. It's almost like our sensitivity. We've been really taught to see that as like a weakness, or something that is like a liability. And it's also like our ability to love. We have such a depth of capacity to love as women, and to open our heart and to share our heart. And that's such a fucking gift. And it can be really fucking painful sometimes.
Oh my God. Yeah. Grief is so deep with that. But yeah, no, it is a gift. And I feel like that's one of the gifts we give to men, is helping them connect to their heart. And so what is a way that a woman can, or maybe it's not even a woman's responsibility, obviously, but how can a man connect to his heart?
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the gifts of the feminine, right? We are more at home in our heart, or often have a lot more, comfort in being in that space. And so I think something that's not really spoken about a lot, but I'm such an advocate for in relationship, if we're in relationship with men, is like being a safe space for a man.
That is not, we don't even talk about it, but it's so not normalized. We do not create safe space.
And like, it's such a conversation about men being a safe space of women, which so fucking here for that conversation. That is so necessary and needed. And yet simultaneously, if we desire a man to open to us and to be vulnerable and to be an expression, which, you know, majority of heterosexual women I know really deeply desire that in a man. It's also about, are you a space for that? Are you a space in which he feels safe to unfurl and feels safe to bring his feelings? And just like if a man is in relationship with a woman, it's really important for him to understand, you know, that as women, we have certain experiences in the body of a woman in terms of the trauma we might move through, or a lot of what women are carrying. And I think the same as women in relationship to men, the fact that for men, they have been conditioned to not feel safe to feel, to not feel safe to cry, to not feel safe to bring their emotions. And so, yeah, I think as women who love men, it's a really beautiful thing to make sure, how can I bring a deeper level of safety to this? And not from like a condescending place of like, it's safe for you to feel here, you can cry. Like, we can do it in a way that simultaneously supports a man to feel like a man and like in his power. But yeah, that safety is so important.
So what are some ways that she can create that for him?
Yeah, well, something that my husband and I talk about is like emotional foreplay for a man. And that, similar to as women, like in the bedroom or in sexual experiences, we desire or we need like sexual foreplay. That's just like the way our body works. That's like female pleasure anatomy. Our body needs up to sometimes 40 minutes or more of foreplay to open and feel ready and juiced up. And it feels, as a woman, so respectful when a man honors that. Mm-hmm. And when a man is, along for that journey and not trying to rush us through. And similarly, like a man needs emotional foreplay. Mm. Like they're not always ready. Like as women, we are, if there's something on our heart, usually we're like, let's have the conversation. Let's do it. There's something here. Like, let's lean in, let's dive in. And so often it's like a man doesn't have that same wiring. They're not as open in those moments to connect with their emotions or to have those kind of conversations. So being able to honor that. And one way to do that is like, if it's a conversation where you want to feel his heart, instead of saying, we need to have this conversation or let's have this conversation now, it's asking permission, right? Like, there's something on my heart right now. Are you open to having this conversation? Or there's something really important to me that I want to bring. Are you open? Or when would you feel open to have this conversation with me? And that is so respectful to a man. And that will support a man to go like, maybe he says in an hour, and that hour is going to support him to just like open a little more instead of feeling like railroaded. And a lot of the time men just go like close their hearts in those moments because they don't feel like they have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen that so many times in my life and hear from my guy friends, or the instance of when they do share and it's not received in the way that the woman wanted to hear it. And then they close again. Yeah.
Totally. And celebrating, again, not in like a condescending way, but being able to celebrate our men when they are opening. And I love that you just said that, like, not just when they're opening and saying what we want to hear, but like opening and just sharing. Like, are we actually listening? Are we, actually present with them? So important.
Yeah. And it's definitely hard when you're hearing something. It's like, ow, this hurts me. But honoring how, like, because I know this happened with my past lover. He would be like, this is so hard for me to say. Like, can you please stay with me as I'm saying this? And I'm like, oh, yes. And I'm holding myself, So it's an interesting journey. It's definitely not something we're just like programmed to do. I feel like it takes awareness.
I love that. He said, this is hard to say, like, can you stay with me? That's so beautiful. I think lines like that and communication pieces like that are so important in relationship, like being able to vulnerably say like, hey, this is hard, or I feel nervous to bring this, or this makes me so uncomfortable, or I'm afraid to share this. Like, they're so beautiful and they can really just like pierce through a moment or like help us just to like, open and be witnessed in a moment.
Yeah, and it's so funny because it's that easy, and yet we forget to say those tiny little things like, this is what I'm feeling, and I'm not just verbalizing, I'm feeling super nervous right now. So
yeah,
that reminder is so great. And I know you've talked about this, and I think it's so important how when you actually like, once you find that committed partnership, that's when like the real, I don't want to say work, but like the real journey begins of like really uncovering all the shit. And like, I find that the safer you feel, the more of your like darker, nastier, more hard things to hold come up. And so yeah, I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, I love that. I love seeing like relationship as a spiritual practice and like as part, like a tool in our evolution or a tool in our awakening. And yeah, I think you're so right. When we do feel a sense of safety and a landing, that's the power of being in a really beautiful devotional relationship. There is that safety for the important pieces for us to be with, and the important pieces of ourselves to see and feel and integrate that begin to arise. And I think like it's so much a part of my teachings on relationships and my husband's as well is like, can we like lean into those moments? I think our society isn't really taught to view relationships in that context. So when, discomfort starts to come, or when pieces of ourselves start to arise, or when we're starting to feel resentment towards our partner, or like whatever, there's almost like a closure that happens, and we don't have the tools. So we just close our heart. Jacob and I call this like the channel of the heart. Like the more shit that gets put in the channel of the heart, the harder it is to feel each other and to actually like be able to give and receive love. So yeah, I think really beginning to notice or see any type of conflict or discomfort in relationship, what I like to say is it's a portal to deeper connection. Like it's not, the goal isn't to get into this perfect partnership where like nothing ever feels hard or there's no like tension. The tension's epic because tension gets to be this doorway to like deeper intimacy. And obviously you need the tools to do that. And obviously it takes practice and devotion to lean into like that's the moment where you really feel that relationship is a spiritual practice. It's like, my triggers are coming up and I want to close and I want to run and I'm angry at you and I feel resentment and I just don't want to be here and every cell of my body feels uncomfortable. Like, can I choose to stay in this and be in my discomfort and witness my partner in their discomfort and stay in for the process of liberating this and yeah, stepping through that doorway to deeper connection.
Yeah, I personally experienced that. Like when you make it through conflict, it's like, oof, the connection is so much stronger. It's so yum. And I'm like, oh, let's do that again. But not obviously, but we forget in those moments, And I think that I just want to like touch on this too, is like there's all these red flags and all this talk. And it's like, oh, well, when that happens, that means I should leave. And so how can you help someone navigate that, whether it's like, oh, this is something where we lean in versus this is something where I need to go?
Yeah, I think that's thank you for bringing that, because that's an important like nuance to bring, because I think there is a difference. How do I want to speak into this? I think as women, we have very strong like inner wisdom, strong like, and I'm sure, I don't know, I'm sure you've had experiences like this, but I can look back in my previous relationships and I'm like, I knew, I just wasn't willing to see those things, or I just didn't want to like, see those things that were arising. So I think it's knowing that often can we be women willing to deeply trust ourselves and deeply trust when we do see something that like is a no, which I would call a red flag, when we know like, yeah, what our no is. And this is also like, I think in relationship or for women coming into relationship or desiring relationship, like being clear on what it is you do desire. And this is like, for me, it's like, how do you desire to feel? Like, how do you desire to feel the way that man is treating you? How do you desire to feel like in the relationship and in the partnership, and letting that be the compass? I think letting go of like the form. I think so often we as women are kind of told to focus on like, he must look like this, or like have this kind of money, and those kind of things can be great. But that's, if we're too connected to that, we are kind of more susceptible to skipping over red flags and things that are just like a no on the more energetic, emotional level. But I feel so in terms of like, yeah, that discernment between almost like red flags and then a moment to lean into. I feel like any time, or my practice and what I teach is really any time that there is like contraction, any time that there is like something, I call it something on a woman's heart, the practice is, can you be witnessed in that? Anytime there's like contraction or resentment, like a lot of us women have been conditioned to just, well, it's very normalized that we hold resentment in our partnership. Like he does something that annoys us and we just withhold. We don't use our voice. He does another thing. And that leads to like such deep levels of contempt and almost like disgust if we're then in relationship with that man for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, that I'm sure everyone knows, you know, a very, very long term. Maybe it's your parents or like people you've witnessed, but where they're just existing beside each other and there is that level of like contempt. And so, yeah, what I teach is really like being willing to bring the truth of your heart. Like when something is there, can you speak it into the space? Can you be witnessed? And even before you were sharing, it's like when your ex-lover was sharing something and you were like, oh, ouch. Like sharing those moments is so important in a relationship when the ouch happens. And learning how to share the ouchy moments, not from a place, I call it like throwing grenades. Like usually when we have like the walls around our heart and we're like, you did this and you hurt me. And it's almost from that place of like blame with like no vulnerability. But learning in a relationship to be able to share the ouchy moments, or even not even the ouchy moment, or the desires, or like a need or something that's there, with a real open heart and leaning in without expectation of how our partner is going to meet us in that moment or how they should act or what they should say, but like really leaning in and meeting in that moment. And then the practice becomes, okay, I've given my partner enough opportunities to meet me there and I haven't felt met there. That's great fucking information.
Mm-hmm.
But as a woman, we must be willing to do our own personal practice. Like this is what I call like the personal practice of the feminine in a relationship. It's like, despite what your partner's doing, can you be in the practice of revealing your heart and bringing that? And then, you know, it's great information to see what unfolds. And that will give you the information as to, can this man hold me? Is this the man I want to be in deep relationship with?
That's so good. And that brings me to another point. Like when you're in a committed partnership and your partner is going through it and they can't show up for you, how can you still love them even though you might need them, but they can't be there?
Yeah.
It's always a hard
one.
one.
I feel like, what'd you say?
It's a hard one.
Yeah. And I think this is like, Jacob and I talk about like willingness in relationship. And I think that's really important because a lot of women, you know, that listen to our podcast or like come into my world are usually women on the growth path or like the personal development path. And potentially their man isn't on that path and they really deeply want him to be. Right. Mm-hmm. It's like, I want him to, I have this vision and I really want him to be like more conscious and all these things. And, you know, I think if we're holding our partner in this, like, you're not enough yet and you need to do this work over here, or you need to hold me in this particular way for me to be able to love you. Like, that is like not inspiring for that man. He will shrivel to that. He will like push you away or he will build up. That's not a safe place for a man to exist when, even if you're not saying it, the action is saying you are not enough. You are not enough for me yet.
Yeah.
Right. And men do not thrive no one thrives in those kind of environments, but especially men. And so, yeah, there has to be, as women, this willingness. If we can hold deep desires for our partnership, but we have to be willing to love them and meet them where they're at. And if we're not, if we desire, like you just said, if we're desiring to be met in a certain way and our partner's not meeting us in that way, there's kind of like a decision point, right? It's like, can you love him and accept the way in which he's got the capacity to hold you? Or is that a no for you? And actually, instead of staying around and making him feel not enough and trying to pull him where you want him to go, can you actually respect him and, yeah, make that decision?
Yeah, it's so hard. Yeah, and I think that a lot of times women, like the culture is not even, there's no compassion for men. It's like it's so tough on them, and that makes me so sad. And I've only recently realized how I was playing a huge part of that and not seeing a man as human, it's like expecting the most from them. And I feel like that's something that a lot of women, that's like normalized in our society.
So normalized, and thinking, and I was there too, and I still see these like patterns of emasculation sometimes show up in my relationship, and it's like, oh, like it's such a confronting thing sometimes. But I feel like this is how we as women have been conditioned to think that that's how we get something out of our men, or have them rise or be what we want them to be, is we make them feel small, or we point out all the ways they're not doing it right. And it's like, I can see how logically that might make sense, but no, man, that's not inspiring for a man at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's not inspiring for a man at all. And the only way to have, like, for any woman listening that desires to feel like more of the like depth of her man's power, or just like more of his like, it's like, can you see, or can you hold him as that? Can you hold him as the powerful fucking man that he is? Even if there's moments where he doesn't see that, like, but can you be such a fucking cheerleader for him in that, and remind him of that, and like actually trust his capacity to be that? Not get out of this idea that like you have to show him all the steps to be the conscious man. It's actually, can you just fucking trust that he knows how to do that? And it's you creating the environment of love and respect and celebration is going to be the ingredients he needs to rise in his own power.
Do you want to be a part of an extraordinary trip of a lifetime where you'll be surrounded by open-minded, fun, and inspiring humans from around the world? You'll be in a space that is so safe you can express all of you, not have to hide or hold back the tears or the weird accents you love to do. The amount of unconditional love you will feel will make you feel unstoppable. You'll be in a tropical paradise surrounded by beauty in the Balinese jungle. Every day you'll eat delicious, healthy meals cooked by a local chef, and instead of cleaning up after, you'll head to the glass sauna and relax. You love growing and are ready to leap into the unknown and connect deeper to your spirituality. At the end of the week, you'll leave feeling like the weight of the world has been lifted off your shoulders. You'll be smiling ear to ear and feel as light as a feather. I will take care of all of your needs for a week at the all-inclusive Alive to Enjoy retreat this December 2nd through 10th. You can book a call with me, Lexi, at alivetoenjoy.com/retreats. And I swear this will be hands down the best way to end 2023. All genders are welcome, and all people who are here to make this world a better and brighter place. Yes, I think that's such a beautiful gift. Like, I'm sure people hopefully experience this in their lives, where someone, even if it's just a friend, is like saw not the potential, but like saw your greatness and inspired you to step into that, you know? And it's like, it helps you. It's like, oh, you see that in me? Like, okay, I can do this. And yeah, when we come from that place, like it's such a loving invitation for them. I think you're so right. It really does. That's such a way to inspire them to be that.
For the women listening, we have a podcast episode called The Art of Loving Men, and it's really epic, and we speak really deeply to this. So I think that's if anyone wants to kind of deepen onto that, go and listen to that one.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, if you want more in that, then go there. and that makes me curious too about how to keep this long-term passion and aliveness in a long-term relationship, and that like deep.
I think the first thing to realize is that like passion and like hot sex is a result of really unsexy things. Right? It's not, despite what I think our culture teaches us in terms of long-term relationships, it's like, you know, learn new sex moves and buy lingerie and get new sex toys, and like all of those things are so fun, but there's like more foundational pieces that are so important that it's going to keep the energy alive and the attraction and the passion there. And I spoke earlier about that like channel between the hearts. And I think this, well, I feel this is like the core of it so if you can imagine like your heart and your partner's heart or your future partner's heart, and all of these things get in the way sometimes of blocking that connection. So it's like, oh, this thing that pissed me off and I didn't say, but I'm withholding it, and I can still fucking feel it. It's still there. Or that thing that, you know, I was disappointed by, or this unspoken desire, or this unspoken expectation that he's not meeting. And like all of these different things get in the way. And this can then like, when we're feeling, and especially as women, when we're feeling resentful, we do not want to fuck our partner. Right? And when we're feeling resentful, really from a somatic level, that means our heart is closed. It's like this armoring of the heart, right? And one of the greatest things to know about like female sexuality and like female arousal is like the doorway to our turn on and our pussy as women is our heart. Like our heart must be open. And I'm sure like you've had experience of this, and the women listening have had experiences of this, of like when the heart isn't open, no matter if your man or your partner is doing the exact same thing he usually does that can turn you on and get you wet or like get you turned on, even if he's doing the exact same things, it's just like, no, your body's a no. And so this is one of like the deepest pieces of keeping passion alive in a relationship. It's like being so fucking devoted to keeping the channel between the hearts clear. It's like anytime there is something there, like your partner gets home at 9 when he said he'd get home at 6, and you're feeling like dropped because you had dinner ready, and he did, like you feel a bit disrespected and a bit upset, like speaking that into the space. Because if that's not spoken and you're not choosing to be witnessed in that, that stays between the channel, and that just, creates that disconnection. And it doesn't seem like much. There's so many as women, we're trained to as well, like this too much wound. We're so scared of being too much that often we don't want to make a big thing of it. But that is actually such a detriment to ourselves, but also our partner and our entire relationship when we're choosing to sweep these micro moments under the rug.
Yeah.
So hot sex is the foundation of it is kind of unsexy. It's like leaning in all those small moments.
It's so true though, because that's when anything is in the way, you feel that, like whether your partner or you are aware of it, like there is an energetic feeling of that. And I also, with my past love, I remember one day just like going up to him, like feeling so off for the past like week. And I just went up to him and I started crying. I was like, something like it just doesn't feel right anymore. And he was like so grateful I brought that in. He's like, you know what, I feel that too. And then we had this beautiful conversation, and we didn't know what it was at first, but just like naming the energy. And I think that we are so afraid to do that because we're afraid of what they're going to say or what's going to happen from that. And yet that's when you really get to hear and understand each other and what's going on and the needs and everything that's not being spoken about.
And that's intimacy, right? Like seeing and understanding each other, and like that, from that place, of course, like naturally our bodies just want to connect, and like naturally we want to, like, then love making and connecting isn't this forced thing that we feel we have to do, or just like our bodies rubbing up against each other. When we're really prioritizing and again devoted to this practice of intimacy, of deeply being witnessed and also witnessing our partner, sex and relating just like is more, it's this magnetic force, right? It's this force of attraction, which I guess is like this polarity that we can also speak about in terms of like the feminine and masculine, and that like, these polarizing forces of, like I just want to be in you, on you, around you.
Yeah. But that also reminds me of the pressure. Like what happens when you're feeling pressure of sex from your partner, and you're showing up just like, all right, I'm going to do this for them. Like, but you're not feeling that. What do you do in those?
And I think that's like, thank you for bringing that, because I think a lot of women and men experience this too, but I work with a lot of women, and I know this is something that a lot of women move through, and a lot of women then just either like really push their partner away and disconnect, or they're just saying yes to sex when they really mean no. And they're just kind of not fully there in the experience. And it's a way of, I'm just going to give him this because this is what he wants and this is what I should do. And there's many reasons why there is a lot of numbness in women's pussies, but that is one of the major things. It's like many small moments of a woman letting someone or something penetrate her when she's a no. And this can happen in the depth of love and in the depth of partnership. And this is one of the like major practices I offer to women, is that start to really be an advocate for your pussy. Like do not let anyone inside of you or anything inside of you before you're really a yes. That completely changes not only a woman's sex life, but the person she's having sex with. because then he or she is going to feel us more and like feel like our presence there. And like, we're not just like, oh, I'm just going to do this for you, but actually we're there in the moment. Mm-hmm. So yeah. What was the original question again? Just so I'm like fully answering.
Yeah. I'm going to say something that I'll really say the question, but I remember it too. That's happened to me where my past lover, he was like, you're not in this, like you're not with me right now. I'm not just gonna have sex with you to have sex with you. He's like, I feel you're not here with me. And I was like, well, I thought you wanted sex and I just wanted to make you happy. And he's like, no. And I think that is so true. Like, but before him, like so many times that I just say yes, right? I was not honoring her, my pussy. And it makes such a big difference. So thanks for saying that. And the question was, what happens when you feel like pressure from your partner to have sex and you're not ready, or yeah, they have a higher sex drive than you or something like that.
Yeah. And I love that your previous lover said that. That's so fucking beautiful, that like that attunement to you, that you're not here. And I think just to like bring a like deep in there for a moment too, a lot of women want to feel that from a man, his depth of attunement and his depth of consciousness. And yet it's our practice of like, if we want to help support a man to attune more and to be more conscious in those moments, it's part of our practice to be able to say no in those moments, right? So he then has to be in the practice of learning how to turn us on and learning truly how our body works and learning how to attune to what's there in the moment. Like that really takes us advocating for our body, which is it's so easily said. It's so fucking challenging given the, and this is a sensitive, tender area for many women who have experienced sexual trauma or inherited trauma. And there is a lot there. And yet it is such an important piece to bring our voice. Mm-hmm. And this is the piece around pressure too. Anytime we're feeling pressure around sex, there is a piece around, where are we not speaking up? Mm-hmm. Where do we not feel confident, or where do we not feel like we have permission to say, hey, I don't want this, or hey, I need more time, or hey, can we just connect without sex? Like that for a woman takes the pressure off. If we know this doesn't have to lead to penetrative sex, often the pressure will be taken off, and often it will lead to penetrative sex, and we're excited for it. But that if you're a woman that feels pressure, say to your partner, like, I just need to know that, like, can we just take sex off the table for tonight? Can we just like play and everything else is on the table? And I've had many moments when I was especially like not as connected to my sexuality as I am now. There would be times where Jacob would say like, and he was doing it as a way of like building the energy and bringing the fire. He'd be like, I can't wait to fuck you tonight, or like, I can't wait to do this, or this is going to happen. And I would feel like my whole body close and contract. And it was like this embodied pressure. And I was just almost like, I would express to him like what was happening in my body. And he was so down to then be like, oh, okay. Yeah. So that pressure piece, I think, is taking sex off the table and learning like a woman feels so safe when she knows that she doesn't have to get her body to a particular place.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really important.
I love that.
And also, sorry, just one more piece there around like, if someone has a bigger sex drive, and I think it's like can you celebrate your partner's, increased or like larger sex drive, and yes, celebrate their sexuality and have conversations around, if I'm not a yes to sex, but you feel really turned on, what are ways that we can explore this? Maybe I watch you touch yourself and get off. Maybe it's actually I leave the space and you just have your own exploration. Like there's ways in which, again, we can find deeper connection without having to make one person wrong or one person right, or feeling disconnection. These moments can actually lead to like deeper connection.
I love it. It's like there's always so many opportunities to connect deeper, and we instantly, like my first reaction and just thinking about this would be like, oh no, like just thinking the worst and feeling like so disconnected because we're feeling different. But it's like, oh, we can actually still find a place where we're both satisfied, and remembering that we have that choice in those moments is just so like heart opening and warming.
It's so important to remember as women we have a choice, and to like advocate for our choice, and to like like really strongly stand in our choice. And that I often say, like, how we fuck is how we do life. And so if we're not, advocating for ourselves in the bedroom, if we're letting, our partner penetrate us before we're like, even when we're not really into it, like that is no doubt showing up in the macrocosm of our life, where, allowing people to overstep our boundaries, we're not advocating for our needs and our desires. And I truly believe like the bedroom or our sexual experiences, if we start to expand into our edges and really lean into our voice and explore different things there, that ripples out into our life so deeply, so deeply.
Yes. And it's always so funny to look at how everything is so connected always.
Totally.
But before we switch, I want to talk also about like, what if your partner is like really like he's wants to like quick, ravish, like really intense sex, and you're like you get the most turned on by slowness, and you kind of do have different sexual energies. How can you both be satisfied? I have a best friend right now going through this, and she's like, I'm just like a melty puddle when he takes his time and goes super slow and he's eating me out and things, but he like doesn't get us turned on unless he's doing it this way. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I love this question. And I think, and we've really deepened into this already, but like communication and like really, and it sounds like your friend is already maybe like communicating this, and that's really powerful. Like really just being able to have everything on the table, and from that place, like realizing, I think, even if we zoom out a little more in terms of partnership and relationships, like being able to see our partner or our lover or the person we're in relationship with, like as a person that's on the same team as us. And so when there is something that feels challenging, again, I said like tension can be a portal to deeper connection. It's like, oh, this person's on my team and this is the thing that feels a little icky, and show up and like use this as a way to feel more deeply connected. Where do I want to go with this? I think one thing is realizing that coming out of like this, I call it like tit for tat energy in relationship and in sex, right? Sometimes we think that like, oh, we both need to be like equally experiencing something or equally giving. And if my partner goes down on me, I have to immediately give him a blowjob and like just make sure everything's equal. And what I've learned in relationship is actually like, I get so fucking turned on from like giving to Jacob, right? No matter if it's not something that I'm necessarily into, I'm a yes to, right? It's not about overstepping my boundaries or doing something I don't want to do. But if I can see that he's turned on by that, that's such a blessing to me to be able to be a part of that experience for him. And so I think bringing that into a sexual context can be really powerful, to be like understanding what our partner really desires, and then being like, oh, I get to be part of offering him or her that experience. Like, what a gift, right? And again, I'm not saying this is then doing something that doesn't feel good for us and overstepping our boundaries or our desires. But seeing that place of like service in sex and relationships is really powerful. And so this might be in terms of like, if he likes more, rabbit or like intensity, this could be maybe like more in the foreplay, or maybe that could be more in like the way that that you give your partner a blowjob. It's like, okay, almost just like getting clear on when she's open to bringing those textures of intensity, and when she's a yes to like more of that, more slow and more of that kind of, slowness and attunement. And I feel like as well as women, so often it's so dependent on the moment of what we're feeling, which is so fucking hard if it's like a man love, like we have a male lover, because sometimes they're just like, I could do the same thing all the time and be turned on and get off on that, where women, there's such an attunement to us. So yeah, I feel like communication is so important, and communication in the moment. Right? So if the man is like ravishing and going fast, with that woman like being able to speak up in that moment and saying, this is what I need, and being able to like meet in those moments is really, really the practice, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's so empowering when you do find your voice in those moments. And if yeah, for anyone that's really struggles, like practice it outside the bedroom first if that feels like super scary, and then bring it in. But my question I'm curious about is, when is it, do you believe in like this, your sex is incompatible, like your sexual desires, you know what I mean? Or is that something you can always communicate through?
I like that question. You know, I think, again, it's like relationship when I was talking about that tension is always a doorway to deeper connection. I think and even looking at like my relationship with my husband, it has evolved so fucking deeply. The sex we have now is nothing like the sex we were having at the beginning. The way we communicate, everything, there has been such a deep level of evolution. So I so deeply believe in the evolution of relationships. I also believe, like, do not stay in a relationship when you're trying to get the other person to evolve and they're not what you want them, like, you know, just like holding out for their potential. No, but I truly believe in the evolution of sex in partnership and an entire relationship. So yeah, I feel like willingness is important. Again, if there is a willingness in the partnership of I'm really willing to understand how to fuck you better and how to love you better and how to satisfy you better, like if there is a willingness and a willingness to hear that and then a willingness to play with that on both sides, anything is fucking possible. Like anything is fucking possible. And then also that willingness to take pleasure and joy not only in the receivership but also in the giving. I think that's the next level of pleasure in partnership. It's like when we get off on just serving.
Ugh, I want to go into that. Yeah, that's my devotion is so good. I want to touch on that next. But one more question on this is, I have a few also people in my life that are with a man that has erectile dysfunction. And navigating that has been really challenging because, like, obviously they want to honor them and respect them and give compassion to them, and yet also they want to have sex with their partner. And so, yeah, is there any way to navigate that you know of?
Yeah, and I think this is almost similar to when we were talking about how to support a man when we desire his heart to open. It's the same with, like, how do we support a man when we want his cock to be harder, right? It's like, can we meet him where he's at, and can we also, like, not make his experience wrong?
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same as women. If we were a no to having sex, or we just like weren't ready, it would feel like so disrespectful for us if our partner was like trying to force us into being ready or having a particular experience. So offering our men that same like grace and really being able to, again, I think men, and it's not all men, but a lot of the time men having erectile dysfunction make that mean something about, it's very connected often to how they feel about themselves as a man and all of these different things. So if we can really show up and help to almost like dissolve that story and not make it mean something, that is going to be their doorway to actually healing their erectile dysfunction too. So yeah, like it's like holding that with a woman is allowed to feel disappointed. She's allowed to feel that. And then also doing her best to hold space for her man, and realizing that there is maybe within that process of him can also share your desire for him to be supported outside of the bedroom in that. Because there might be, you know, coaching that he could receive or different things that he could go and do if that's really important to you as a woman, like really offering that and sharing that with the man. But yeah, then also knowing that there's so much more in the bedroom that can be done, like even when a cock isn't hard, right? There's so much more to play, and being open to exploring that.
I agree. Yeah. And the only thing I knew to share with them was that, like, realizing that that's heavily connected to their mind. Their cock is connected to their mind. So, like, they're probably nervous. They're probably anxious, probably had sexual trauma. Like, men's sexual trauma is very rarely talked about. So I was like, this is another space for you to get to understand him and find out, like, what's going on, because it's not about you or your attractiveness or anything like that. It's like really something happening with them internally. So just that
is so true. I really love that you brought that up, and about how what we as women can make that mean about us in that moment. Like, oh, is he not turned on by me? Am I not sexy enough? It's more about his experience of himself in that moment. And like you said, it's either performance anxiety or it's a sexual trauma or something there. So yeah, it's such a beautiful moment to be curious, right? And respectful, but curious. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that piece. That was really important.
Of course. And now let's end on this is the devotion. So how can you be more devotional to your man?
I feel like beyond even like first, I think it's like devotional to the partnership. Yeah, especially the piece around keeping the channel of the heart clear. It's like, for me, like that is what devotion in a relationship is can we be devoted to keeping the space between our hearts clear? And so we can feel each other, right? So that's a personal practice for each person. Like as a woman, it's usually, can I be so devoted to revealing my heart? Can I be so devoted to continuing to bring all flavors of myself to the relationship, so I'm not like feeling like I've got to contort myself and contract? And then in terms of specifically devoted to our man, I think like there is kind of like, we can look at this generally, but then I think, and I'll speak to that in a moment, but I think that the best way is like, one of my favorite fucking questions of all time is like, how can I love you better? Mm-hmm. And I think this is like in anyone, in partnership, in like, even in friendships, in family, this is just such a beautiful question. How can I love you better? And sometimes when you ask a man that, they're going to be like, I don't know, you're doing a good job. Like, but to then also show that, hey, I want to show up for you more deeply. I'm so here in service to you. Can you have a bit of it? It would be really, it's really important to me that you spend a day or two just like thinking about that. Like, how can I love you better? Yeah, you might have to give a man a few examples to kind of get him riffing, but that's really powerful. But also in terms of just like generally for men, one of the things that feels most loving for a man is feeling respected. Like feeling really respected. And this is why emasculation and trying to tell a man what to do can feel so heartbreaking and crushing to a man. Right? Because he doesn't feel respected. He feels like a little fucking boy when you're trying to tell him what to do or give him like, you should do this or right? That doesn't make a man feel like a powerful fucking man. So one of the ways we can be devoted to our man is like showing them respect. And that might be an example of this right now is my man is like creating this big retreat here in Australia. It's like 100 and something men are going, and he's just like really in it right now. It's a really intense time. So the way I'm like respecting his cooking and clean, like doing, like really showing up and like really respecting that this is a season where he really needs to show up in his business. And I am just like really, really, yeah, giving him space, doing the thing, like really, really showing up for him in the home. And so, yeah, this could also be, how can I love you better? Another question for a man could be, how can I make you feel more respected? Right. And that's the most important, like hearing from our own men, like what that would be and what specifically that is for that individual is really powerful.
Yeah, I asked my last lover that, and he was like, just that alone is respect. Like you just saying that. And I was like, okay, that feels good. Cause like I did disrespect him a few times. And so one last question, which is like, when you do fuck up and you are feeling like, okay, maybe you listen to this episode and you're like, shit, like I've done so many things wrong. How do you hold yourself as that like shame or like discomfort is rising within you, knowing that you've hurt your partner?
That is like one of the greatest things we can bring, like the practice of ownership when we are like practicing getting better at loving our partner, even still now. And I've been consciously on this journey. Like Jacob and I have been together for 9 years, but it's probably been 4 or 5 years where we've been consciously meeting each other in this place. But like I said earlier, there's still like some things, especially around business, because I've been in business longer than Jacob. That's where like that emasculation can come out. And the part of me that's like, I know better than you. And so sometimes I'll say some things like, you should do this, or you should like, and then I'll either catch myself immediately. It's usually in his office where I might say a comment like that. And then I'll go back into his office and be like, oh, fuck, I'm so sorry. I made you feel small. Or I said that thing that wasn't, I didn't mean to do that. And a line that we really practice in our relationship is, can I have that again? Can I have another go at that? And so that's just an opportunity. If you are to bring that into your relationship, really, really giving like your partner the grace in those moments. If they do ask, can I have that again? Like give them a chance to. Don't hold them in resentment for what they did the first time. But yeah, being able to witness, being able to bring that to our partners in the moments where we feel like we fucked up and just own it like, fuck, I did that thing again where I try and make you feel small, or I try and control you. Like, that is respectful, right? A man will feel respected, and vice versa. If a man shares, like, owns when he's fucked up, like, that feels loving to a woman, right? Instead of just like trying to just, again, sweep things under the rug. Like, that ownership is so beautiful. And this is how we rewire those moments, when we like catch ourselves and practice doing it again.
Naming it. Yeah. And it feels so good. Like when they see you and they, then they know that you are aware too, which helps them soften and know that they're not. It just is overall like a beautiful thing for both people, I find.
Totally. I agree. And those moments can also be a bit playful in the end.
Yes.
Like, oftentimes I'll do that. I'll come in and be like a bit sheepishly like, oh, can I have another go of that? Like, God, always just a bit like, like, it doesn't have to be. I think sometimes we think in these moments of tension, especially as conscious people, we have to be really serious and it has to be this big thing. And it's like, there's also like bringing play into these moments of tension is just like so, it cuts through. It's, it can really like shake shit up in those moments, which is what we need when we're like trying to get out of patterns we've been playing with in a relationship or previous relationships for a long time.
I agree. I love it. Playfulness is so fun. I think that just brings out more love too in general when you have that partnership. Okay, so the last question of the podcast is, what is one of your favorite, most romantic memories you have or moments?
Oh. Oh, there's a few, but then my mind just took me to Jake and I got married last year. So just like the actual ceremony, just like remember we were holding hands, and I don't think I looked anywhere else but into his eyes for a good like hour during that ceremony. And that like I thought I was going to cry the entire time because the lead up was just so like, it was just so beautiful. And I just thought, but I was just so ecstatically in love. And yeah, just that like culmination of our relationship, and that moment, just being here with them, like being there with him, just surrounded by all the humans we loved. Yeah, I can just still feel that in my body. So yeah, just we had a festival wedding. So it was like 2 or 3 days, and it was just that whole weekend was just like unbelievably delicious.
So what did you do for it? And if you want to answer this, why did you wait so long to get married?
Oh, I feel like we were in a build phase of our business for a really long time. So it just wasn't like, we always knew we wanted to get married, but it just wasn't like in terms of financially, and also just like, in life. But we hired we'd actually held a retreat at this property like 4 years beforehand, and it was called Honor, and it was all about bringing the masculine and feminine together. And we did all of the ceremony and everything under this tree. And that's actually where we ended up getting married. It was just, and we never had that vision. Even when we got engaged and I was looking at places only down the line, I was like, oh, we should look at the farm. So yeah, it was on this like big kind of property and farm. And yeah, we had all our family there for 3 nights, and big wedding. One of my dear friends officiated it, and we had this beautiful ceremony, and then lots of music and bands, and our friends DJ'd, and it was just so much fucking fun. So fun. I'd highly recommend that for weddings, just to like be with your favorite people for multiple days.
I keep telling everyone that because I went to an Indian wedding and it's a whole week long. And I'm like, why isn't every wedding like this? Like, because you actually get to spend time with your loved ones instead of just like I'm so stressed and there's only this short amount of time. I can't even see everyone and really connect. So that's so cool.
Totally. I never felt, even on our wedding day, it was so beautiful because I was like, I'd already hung out with everyone the night before. I knew we had the next day. I never felt like a pressure I just danced the whole night. Like, so I didn't really have to talk to people.
I love it. I mean, that's what it should be about. Like that day is for celebration, connection with your lover. So I think that's a beautiful format. Well, yay. So if people want to work with you, where can they find you? What do you have?
Instagram is the best place, at the.meg.o. And right now I have some one-on-one spaces that I run. The podcast I run with my husband Jacob. So that's Sex, Love, and Everything in Between, which is available everywhere. And then I also run a membership program for women called Full Spectrum Woman, which doors are closed to now, but they'll open up early 2024. So there'll be a wait list on my Instagram. And then I have a bunch of pleasure courses and different things if you're more like a self-paced kind of gal and you want to dive into my work like immediately, which is all on my link in bio on Instagram. Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lexi.
You made it to the end of the episode, so now it's time for our snuggly heart breath of the day. Place a hand or both hands, if it's safe to do so, over your heart and take a big breath into your heart center. Open your mouth and let it go. I'm so grateful to have shared this time with you. If you enjoyed this convo, please share with your besties and your fam. And if you're a visual person like me, fly over to YouTube and watch the video. If you want to do a random act of kindness today, please leave a 5-star review so more people in the world can get their heart snuggled. You're helping tremendously when you do this, so thank you so much. And as a gift for doing so, I'll give you my Soften Your Heart Medi that feels like an exhale and a hug from within. When you leave a review and email me the screenshot to heartsnuggles@alivetoenjoy.com, you can also find the email in the show notes and you'll get the free meditation. Sending you the warmest, comfiest hug and lots of unexpected blessings your way. Remember that every single person just wants to be loved. So how can you be loved today?